So the car stores profiles, and we talked about this a little bit before. So each individual driver has a profile, and you can add different profiles for different people, and it will move the driver's seat. It will save just about every setting in the car. I know a lot of petrol cars, if you do things like turn off traction control or change a setting anywhere in the car, it will forget that every time you turn on the car. Sorry? Oh, was it? No, is that better? Um, so it would forget those settings every time you turn the car on, whereas a Tesla remembers everything, really. There's very few things that reset when you restart the car. So to modify those, you can see your name, the name up the top. There's a few things on the top of the screen here that disappear when you're driving. The name is one of them because it kind of assumes that you've already picked you and once you've left, and then clears up that stuff off the screen. But when you're parked, you can pick a name, and as you click that, the seat will move and all that sort of stuff, right? You can go into the profile settings and add more and delete those. But generally, what will happen is that if you're changing anything, if you move a seat or a steering wheel, if I go into the main control screen and adjust the mirrors, for example, and I turn the wheels to do that, when I click save, it will save that to that profile. If I turn on, oh no, do not want to do that. If I change other settings, you'll occasionally see it pop up with a box down the bottom corner saying that it's saving the profile and saving that setting into that profile. With the profiles, you can also, in the lock screen, a related part of this is that you can attach different locks or different keys, really, to a profile. So my card is linked to me. You can edit the name of the card or the phone. So at the moment, my Pixel phone is attached to my profile. If I want to link it to John's profile, I just tap on the face there, and it saves this key into his profile. So when my Pixel phone approaches the car and unlocks the door, the seat will move and match everything and all the settings to John's profile. Or I can change that profile back to me, and I can reattach that key to my profile. This is where you would, if you want to add extra swipe cards or rings that you've bought online, or my Galaxy Watch can be set up as a RFID key for the car as well, as a swipe key. I can add those here and pair them to profiles. You'll need another existing key to do that. You'll need a card that's already attached to it. If you've somehow got yourself in a situation where you've lost all of your cards and you're trying to attach a new one, call Tesla. They'll check your ID and go through a few ID check details, and will let you pair a new card to the car. So sharing the car. Check that. So there's a lot of stuff here, which may come as no surprise. There's a lot of things to figure out. Sometimes you have to hunt for it. Sometimes a software upgrade will move things around a bit. There was a big software upgrade 3 or 4 months ago that totally changed the layout of all this. I think broadly for the better, but it certainly upset a lot of people that things shifted around so much. Anyway, starting at the front page though. So you tap on the car, and that gets you the settings screen. So I'll just quickly skim through the settings. These are the things you broadly set and forget. You shouldn't be going in here too frequently. This is how on this front page is really the stuff you use relatively frequently, like turning headlights on and off, changing whether auto high beams enabled or not, opening the glove box, locking the windows, child lock. If you tap that, you'll get an option of it locking the left or the right door, which is a new option that was added recently. It's good if you have a tween-age kid on one side and a baby on the other. You've got the option of just locking the door that matters rather than locking them both out. And folding the mirrors in. There are some settings like that, like folding mirrors and the charge rates that are remembered per location and per profile. So if I set the mirrors to fold here and drove away, they would unfold as I started driving. But if I parked back here as I approached, it would fold the mirrors again. And that's designed for someone who might have a really narrow garage. As they drive towards their really narrow garage, it will fold the mirrors in as they enter that garage. Lots of cool things you can do with a software car, that just smart interactions between its location and what you're doing and who's driving, that can make it a lot cleverer, but also more complicated. This is where you adjust your mirrors. You get an interface to adjust these mirrors and whether that auto fold feature is enabled or not in your profile. And auto mirror tilt, which is dipping the mirrors when you put it in reverse. By default, when you put the car in reverse, the wing mirrors dip down so that you get a better view of the gutter edge. You can turn that on or off, and also with it in that mode, if you put it in reverse whilst it's in this mode and adjust the mirrors, it will adjust the angle separately for how it is in reverse compared to when you're driving. And auto dimming. Some cars don't have auto dimming mirrors. Mine does. It's sort of a feature that came and went and came back. But the 3 rear view mirrors have tinting, like electronic tinting film in them. Recording in Sentry. So recording is just dash cam. It just keeps 10 minutes of footage rolling on a USB stick that you have plugged into the car, and keeps those 10 minutes. If you hit the horn, it will keep the previous 5 minutes and the next 1 minute or so permanently. We'll sort of put that aside for you to use later. Eventually, if you've done that a lot, if you have a lot of Sentry events and a lot of dash cam events, the drive will fill up, and you'll need to take the drive out and format it, or either format it in the car and just wipe it all clean again, or take it out to a computer and have a look at all the footage, which, I don't know, if nothing actually happened, then it doesn't really matter, and you just delete it and move on with your life. Sentry is the security system where it's monitoring all of the people around the car and will record any motions towards the car. People that are moving towards the car or past the car will save that footage as well. It uses the AI of the computer. It uses the same AI that the car uses for autopilot, which is quite power intensive. So you'll find it uses about 180 watts. So you'll find if you leave the car parked overnight that you'll lose a couple of % of charge just to running Sentry mode, whereas typically if you leave the car without Sentry mode, it'll use basically nothing. Just something to be aware of. And if you're charging off a normal power point that's a 2,000 watt, 2 kilowatt power point, you're burning 180 of those 2,000 watts on just running the Sentry camera. So it almost kind of matters, like could make a marginal difference to your day the next day because you've burned so much energy on Sentry mode. So there's in the settings for Sentry, you can turn it off so that it's only enabled when you're not at home or not at work or not at a favorite location that you've saved in the navigation. I do that. I don't, at home, it's in a garage, there's cameras on the house, it's fine. At work, I'm not that far away, I can see the car from my desk, it doesn't really matter. So I just use it when I'm other places, so generally that has dramatically reduced the amount of consumption on an annual basis that Sentry would use. And there's screen brightness. I've got the brightness turned right up to make this camera thingy work well, but you'd normally have it on auto, and it auto dims as it goes through tunnels and things like that. Most of the time it makes a really good decision. Sometimes it makes a bit of an ordinary decision about how bright the screen should be depending on the environment you're in, and you might want to go in there and bump it up a bit. Some of these options, you'll see this, mine's a performance, so I have chill and sport, whereas a lot of other cars will have chill and standard, and different steering mode options as well. I have a sport option. I think there's only comfort and standard on a rear wheel drive one. And most new models don't have a choice for regenerative braking. You just have to have regenerative braking in a newer model, whereas I can turn it off. Those options are probably fairly obvious. We're saying chill mode, people say, oh, I'm saving energy by using chill mode, and it's not. I mean, if you drive the car at the same throttle application that's equivalent to chill mode in sport mode, it's going to use the same amount of energy. It is simply how hard you press the button, and putting it in chill mode just stops you from pressing it too hard. All it's doing is limiting your behavior in the car, which sounds like a bad time to me. Stopping mode, roll, creep, and hold. Holds a bit weird if you're used to a normal petrol car, that if you come to a stop and don't keep your foot in the brake, the car rolls backwards. In hold mode, it won't. It will just stay where it is. Creep mode makes it behave like a old school automatic transmission, where if you take your foot off the brake, even without pressing the accelerator, the car will start creeping forwards. It sort of emulates that old school automatic transmission behavior. Whereas normally, if in hold mode, all you need to do is come to a stop with the brake, lift your foot off the brake, and the car will stay there. Even on a really steep hill, it'll stay put until you touch either the brake or the accelerator. My car is track mode. Because I'm not in the driver's seat, you need to put your foot in the brake to get it into track mode. But I can customize it though and show you what this looks like. You can change the handling balance and have presets. You can do mad skids and whatever you want to do with it there, and tune it to your preferences when you're racing it on a racetrack. It also has a lap timer and all that sort of stuff built in, which is really good, and records a phenomenal amount of data from the car onto the USB drive. If you create a track mode folder on the USB drive, it'll create this massive spreadsheet of data that has a column for exactly the brake pressure on every single wheel, the slip angle at every single wheel, temperatures of all the motors, and G-forces, lap times. Just a phenomenal amount of information that you can turn into some really beautiful graphics of your car driving around a track with the map of the track and where you are and how hard you're braking at each corner and all this sort of stuff. Amazing stuff if you're into that kind of thing. And slip start, which is for getting out of if the car's almost bogged and you need to get it to slip to actually get spin the wheels a bit to get it out of where you're stuck. Slip start can help you with that. Charging, which we touched on a bit before. So this is an example here. This is a performance. It's got an NCA battery, and you can see on this slider here that it's indicated daily and trip. So that's relatively self-explanatory. If you have it in the daily range, you're not really doing any damage to the car. It will be quite happy for you to have it up, and that little indent there at the top of the daily range is 90%. If you're going on a trip, feel free to slide it in a trip and get an extra 10% into it, ready to use the next day. You can change the current, and you'll notice it says charge current at this location. So this is another one of the things that's save per location. You'll sometimes find dodgy old power points and things like that might get hot or trip out. If you're at a farm or something like that, they have really long cable runs, and the car can trip out. It'll as it loads the cable, the voltage will drop too much, and the car doesn't like to see the voltage drop more than about 15%, and will error out saying that there may be a faulty cable. So what you can do to make it a bit safer is turn the current down here manually, and it will remember that forevermore in this location. You can do scheduling, so you can do scheduled charging. So with this schedule is a scheduled departure. You can also change it to off. Sorry, that was scheduled start, and when it will start charging. You can also change it to off peak, which, as it says, optimizes for off-peak electricity rates late at night, and it will schedule the completion of your charging. So it will do the math on how much current it's got available at this location, how low the battery is, and we'll figure out that to get you've currently set the limit to 90%, and I'm at 70%, and I'll need 4 hours to get from 70% to 90%. So, and I've set a departure time of 6 o'clock, so it will start charging at 2 a.m. to be full by 6 a.m. And in that way, you can, when you're doing those trips, you can minimize the amount of time your car spends filled up to 100%. You can also do preconditioning. So at 6 a.m. or whenever your departure time is set to, you'll come out to a car that's warm, cool, air conditioners on, ready for you, which I've been to the snow, was delightful. Just and also on really hot days, it is really nice to come out to a car that's ready to drive. The snow's melted off the windows. It's used a boatload of power doing it, depending on exactly how cold it is, but it is really nice. And it will tell you a bit of information about how much you spent on your last supercharging event, how much that cost you, and supercharging tips. That's interesting. I haven't seen that before, but this is the joy of a software car. Things get added and changed all the time. So these are some really, so these are, we've talked about just about all of this. That's pretty cool. Autopilot. This car has been optioned with full self-driving, which is to say that it gets a few extra features on autopilot compared to normal. I get lane changes, summon, stopping. It'll stop at traffic lights and things like that. But generally, you'll have these autopilot options. You won't have navigate on autopilot, but you will have auto steer, and auto steer is off by default. But I'd highly recommend turning it on. It works really well. If you're driving along, if you tap the drive stalk, so tap the right hand stalk down towards drive, if you do it once, you'll get cruise, adaptive cruise, where it will go to your target speed limit and follow the car in front at a safe traveling distance. Or you double click it and it will take over steering as well if it can see the lines on the road well. Won't deal with traffic lights, won't deal with roundabouts and tight corners and things like that. But long highway trips, it takes so much of the energy out of driving the car. Your focus can be out on the horizon, seeing things happen out in the distance, not focusing on the lines that are right in front of you. You can let the car do that. And it is, autopilot. That's much like autopilot in a plane. It doesn't take over driving. It helps you. It takes the tedious part of driving away, the keeping squarely between the lines, and lets you focus on more interesting things like the scenery and hazards out in front of you. And you can change that when you're in adaptive cruise. You can change the default speed setting that it goes to. Normal, I've got mine set to 5%, so that means that if the speed limit in the map says 100, my cruise will go to 105. If it's 60, it'll go to 63. That kind of thing. Automatic blind spot camera, when you indicate, turns on a camera. You can see there on the bottom, so it turns on those wing cameras so that you can see out the side of the car. It's a bit naff. I find it a bit annoying, so I usually don't use it. I can look in the mirrors. It's much the same effect. Blind spot collision warning, so it'll beep at you when you have a car. If you put the indicator on a 2-lane road and there's a car next to you in your blind spot, it will beep at you, telling you that you're about to drive over the top of them. Speed limit warning, whether it's off. Display's pretty subtle. It just sort of pulses the speed limit of the road. If you're traveling over 5 kilometers an hour over the speed limit, the 100 sign on screen sort of flashing at you, or you can make it chime, which is a bit annoying. So I have it on display. Generally, I use autopilot 98% of the time, so it's just doing a safe margin on the speed limit anyway, so I don't really need speed limit warning. Forward collision warning is using the AI to track things that are out in front of the car, and if it looks like you're about to run into them, it'll scream at you. Lane departure avoidance, I find a bit annoying. It tracks the lanes in front of you, and if it thinks you're drifting out of your lane, will either warn you or warn and assist you back into the middle lane. Sometimes with wonky line marking around roadworks and things like that, it can be a bit of a hassle. It can be a bit, beep very loudly at you for no good reason, because you simply have to drive outside the lines to get through the roadworks. But you can leave that off and still have emergency lane departure avoidance. If it's really, really sure that you're really, really driving off the road, it'll still nudge your car back onto the road. And it's a bit like the autopilot one. You can overpower it quite easily. It's not going to yank the steering wheel out of your hands doing that correction. Automatic emergency braking should absolutely be left on at all times. It prevents you from running into things, particularly if you're not paying attention and the car in front brakes suddenly. It will brake on your behalf to prevent running into them. Very little downside to that. It very rarely alerts inaccurately, false alarm. It's quite good. Obstacle aware acceleration prevents you from running into things or more accelerating too quickly in confined spaces. So accidentally shoving the accelerator while your car's in the garage, it will limit the amount of accelerator that you get, so you don't drive the car through the wall of your garage. If you have that turned off, the car will gleefully run through the wall of your garage. It can intrude a little bit on occasion. If your motorbikes have filtered to the front of your lane, or there's something around the front of the car when you want to accelerate, you'll just get soft acceleration. You press the accelerator pedal and it'll just ease off the line gently. Traffic aware cruise chime, you can change it whether you get a ding dong noise if you just put it in a traffic aware cruise. You always, and you can't turn it off, get a ding dong noise when you put it into auto steer, just to make you aware that the car is now in control, and also you get a bing bong noise when it comes out of control again, just to help you be aware of what mode the car's in. And green traffic light chime, there's a little subtle ding noise when it thinks that the lights in front of you or the car in front of you have taken off from the line. Sometimes it will see a green turn arrow and chime at you saying that the light's green when you're going straight ahead, so take it with a grain of salt. We've been through locks. So there's a couple of extra things here around locking. Window lock prevents passengers from opening the windows. If you have little kids in the car, sometimes they just play with all the switches, so you can turn off the window switches to prevent issues with that. The driver door unlock mode, it can be set up so that when you're approaching the car or you unlock the car with the app, that it only unlocks the driver's door, not all of the doors. If you're the only person that ever drives a car, or you're concerned for someone, like a carjacking sort of situation, someone jumping in the passenger seat just after you jump in the driver's seat, that option is for that. It just means that you have to unlock it again to get the other door open, or press. So there's one thing, there's this little padlock up the top, and that is the lock and unlock the car right now, this instant. So when you if you've got this feature enabled and the passenger door is still locked and you're picking someone up from the airport, you can just tap that lock button and unlock that passenger door to let them in. Unlock on park unlocks the so when you take off and the car's doing more than 10 kilometers an hour, it locks the doors, and that will unlock it when you park the car again. That should be on. So one of the common things is when you stop at the school run to pick up your kid, and they go to the door and the door's still locked. And I've seen a few people asking, I'm in a bit of a panic. I couldn't unlock the door for my kid to get in the car. I had to get out of the car and let them in. And like, what really got that door unlocked was putting the car in park. They were still left the car in drive, and the kids trying to get in the car. So for safety, the car should be in park to let a passenger in the car. So the reminder there isn't so much to press the unlock button, it's to put the car in park and make sure that the car's secure before the doors are open. Lock confirmation sound. Car left open notifications. If you walk away from the car and you happen to leave one of the windows and doors opened, it will remind you. If you haven't shut one of the doors properly, if the door's left ajar or whatever, it will pop up in the app and remind you that you've left a door open. You can exclude home, which I do because I leave the doors open or the boot open or whatever in the garage at home all the time, and I don't really care. Lock confirmation sound is just a horn toot when you walk away from the car, just to remind you that it's locked properly, and or possibly remind you that it's not. And closing windows on lock, which I guess is fairly obvious. When it locks the car, it closes all the windows as well, which is very, very handy and very good. If someone's left a window, you're much less likely to end up with a car full of water in the rain if you've got that turned on. Headlights, leave them on auto, forget about it. There's fog lights, front and rear fog lights, depending on the options of your car, whether you'll have these or not. One trick is that they're impossible to see if you're the driver of the car. They turn off if you get out of the driver's seat. They turn off when you move it into park. If you want to see what the fog lights look like, you literally need someone else to sit in the driver's seat and turn them on, and then walk around the car and have a look. Just weird. One of those odd things I found. Dome lights. So dome lights are the interior lights in the car. Ambient lights. Some cars have got ambient lights. Some cars don't. The premium all-wheel drive and performance cars have them. They're just little subtle lights under the door pockets and under near your feet that let you sort of see the floor when you open the door. Auto high beam is run by AI and is a bit hit and miss. Sometimes it will keep the high beam on way too late when people are approaching and glare them a bit. And yeah, generally it's a lot better than it used to be for my mind. But your mileage may vary. Whether you want it to be auto or not is up to you. Headlights after exit keeps the headlights on for a minute after you get out of the car, so you can find your keys, get inside your house, and all that sort of thing. Steering wheel lights are just there's little indicator or lights in the arrows to the left and the right of the steering, the adjustment knobs. Just whether those lights are on or not. They're very subtle. You can barely see them anyway. Moving on to the display. So you can change the theme. I normally have it in auto. I was playing around with this camera setup yesterday, so I had it in light mode. But auto mode means that on the mathematical sunrise and sunset, or if you're going through a tunnel, it will go into dark mode. And brightness is auto. That was on some of these settings are duplicated. They're both on the main sort of control screen. You've got that brightness there as well, but it's also on the display page at the same time. Screen clean mode is pretty nifty for the obvious, cleaning the screen. You just need to hold that down for a few seconds to get the screen to unlock. Touchscreen language has some interesting side effects. British English not only changes the car and see it says bonnet and boot. Ignore the boot flopping up and down. That's a function of my electronic boot lift, which this car didn't come with originally. It just tricks the computer into thinking that it's always opening or closing. So it says bonnet and boot. If you change that to US, it will be frunk and trunk. And it will also be frunk and trunk in the app as well, depending on what the car is. You change your voice recognition language and voice navigation language, just the accent that the navigation voice uses. The rest of it's pretty obvious. Percentage and distance. This is probably a bit interesting in Tesla land. Distance, and that's this distance up here next to the battery gauge, is the distance left to empty based on the rated range of the car, the EPA range. So it's not the NEDC range that was on the sticker on the car when you bought it. It's not the range that it's likely to use with you driving it now, that it's learned from your driving patterns and how big the wheels are and whether you've got something on the roof rack. It's a theoretical number that you could actually achieve. EPA is not quite as optimistic as NEDC in that you could make that distance if you drove at 96 kilometers an hour and had the windows up and had the original tyres that were delivered with the car and drove sensibly. But realistically, it's not a real number and not remarkably useless. You're not particularly useful, so I just leave it on percentage, and I know what that means. Treat it more like a fuel gauge.
The algorithm that you use in the navigation system.
No, so the algorithm it uses in the navigation system is based on the last 50 kilometers you've travelled. So it's actually more useful. It's based on real recent data. So as you navigate, that number's significantly more useful and will tell you a totally different story to the number next to the fuel gauge. Temperature and what units are used. Trips will tell you a few stats about where you're going, where you've been. Has 2 trip meters. You can rename those, and if you want, if you've got one that you want to use as lifetime or whatever, tell you how much energy and how many watt hours per kilometre you've used since you last reset those trip meters, or since your last charge, or since you last put the car in drive. So this current trip is just since you put it in drive. So can be pretty handy if you forgot to reset it at the beginning of the drive and you're just curious how you're going, on this current part of the leg of the journey.
How do you reset?
You can reset trip A and trip B. The current trip will just reset the next time you put it in park. So it's in park now, so it's 0. But if I put it in drive, it will start counting and incrementing until I put it back in park again. Or until I next put it in drive again, it will reset. These ones, there's reset buttons down the bottom. Yeah, so current trip, sorry, you can reset current trip right this second. And the labeled trip meters as well. Navigation. So navigation volume, you can mute the navigation or have it speak to you and how loud it speaks to you. Automatic navigation is the calendar entry stuff that someone was talking about earlier. It will synchronize the calendar, the app in your phone. You need to give it permission. One of the things it'll ask you when you install the app on your phone is whether it should have permission to your calendar. If you do give it permission to calendar, the car, when you get in and hit drive and you have a 9 a.m. meeting at Ann Street in the city, the sat-nav's already navigating to Ann Street in the city, ready to go. Can be really good. Well, yeah, it depends on it's pulling data from your calendar, so whether there's a good address in the calendar, whether that address matched something that made sense in the map. It will also automatically, if you don't have something in your calendar, it will navigate to work in the morning and home in the afternoon as well.
If you play with the volume button when the navigation voice is talking, it will stay at that level.
Yeah, it'll get remembered. Trip Planner automatically adds supercharger stops to your journey if you need them. Online routing. So one thing is that even if you don't pay for premium connectivity will give you the red traffic lines on the map. Which I have, says there's little orange lines showing you where the traffic is. Even if you haven't paid for that, it will still use traffic data to improve your route. It will tell you to take an exit and take a detour, but you won't see the red lines on the screen explaining why you're taking that detour or exit, which can be a bit confounding. And how often it will reroute. Like if it finds a new route or there's some traffic blockage up ahead, if it's going to save more than a minute, then change my route to avoid that issue. And avoiding ferries and tolls, usual kind of thing. You can see those same settings when you're navigating somewhere. If you wait for it to process, if you're cruising, you're driving along like that with it navigating. If you hit that 3-dot menu in settings, this box will pop up and give you all those same options here, including being able to mute and change your volume. There's a quick access to that. You can add stops and edit the trip as well. This is a fairly recent feature. It lets you have multiple waypoints. This can be quite good if you were going to non-Tesla chargers. You could put the non-Tesla charger down as a waypoint towards your actual destination and have it all calculated. And if I navigate home via the Sydney Opera House, save that, it will automatically add all those supercharger stops and give you a trip overview. Down the bottom, it will tell you, roughly what time you'll be getting to these stops. If you just go somewhere like home and scroll down the bottom, stretch that out and go down to the bottom. It's not wanting to tell me, possibly because I've been parked for so long that it might need to do some calculations, but it'll normally tell me what percentage I'll have when I arrive home. If you have multiple stops, it'll tell you what percentage you'll be at each one of those stops.
It's sometimes tricky to get it to go.
Yeah, it's certainly, it's like kind of gripping that, can be a little fiddly at time. I think it's been tuned a bit more recently to be a bit less finicky. You'll also find one extra thing is you can save these home and work locations. If you hold those down, you'll be able to change the address for those locations. You'll see all the previous places you've been. You can have favorites saved in here, and charging as well. So this is, you can filter out, so it'll show on the map all of the charging locations, but you can filter out the slow ones. So 3 lightning bolts is superchargers. It also shows you that there are a bunch of destination chargers around, and on this map, this is a really good integration between the supercharger network and the car. Is, it's telling me that there are 3 bays open in the Gold Coast at the moment. And you click on it, it'll tell you how much that supercharger will cost, how far away it is, what amenities are available, and you can just hit the go button and go there if you want to. So there we go. Scroll down, right down, and it says if I left right now, it reckons I'll get there with 4% left. If I came back, and this is a useful planning tool as well if you're just planning a single journey. If you look at the bottom, it says that if I wanted to go down there and come back again without charging, I'd be at negative 12%. So if I wanted to go to the Gold Coast and not charge and come back, that means that I should put 12% in the car right now before I leave. Like if I was at one supercharger and wanted to know how much I needed to put into the car right now to get to the next supercharger, I could put it in the nav and say, okay, well it reckons that I need to put in another 12%. So you'd add 10% to that and say I'll put in 22% right now, and then I'll be able to head off safely and make it to that next supercharger. Safety features. Allowing mobile access is just whether or not the mobile app works. You can't turn it on or off. Well, when you turn it on and off, you need to put in your password, because it would, if you borrowed this, if I lent this car to someone and they turned that off, it'd stop me being able to track them, which I probably, as the owner of the car, don't want to do. So it needs their password for them to turn that feature on and off. You can power off the car, which will fully shut it down. It still lets you unlock the car. It's not totally dead, but it will open the contactor and it will put the computer and autopilot computer totally to sleep. Sometimes you can get issues with the autopilot computer, and doing a power off will help you fix those issues. But if Tesla tell you to do it, worry about it then. But it's just, it doesn't realistically save a lot of power, and if you leave the car parked and with Sentry turned off, it will eventually basically power itself off anyway when the car goes to sleep. So not too much to worry about. Speed limit mode, kind of obvious, does what it says on the tin. One trick is that it also, if you turn on speed limit mode, you get chill mode as well. So not only limit to 140, but it will take longer to get there because it'll be locked in chill mode as well. And that's what you get when you use valet as well. If you set a valet profile, you can set it up so that there's a valet profile, and if you just drive the car without a PIN number, it will be in valet mode. If you put the PIN number in, it'll go into your profile and let the car drive faster. The dash cam and Sentry mode, few options here about excluding home and work, which I was talking about before. Dash cam is auto, and auto means that, well, in manual mode, it will only save those 10 minutes of interesting footage if you press the camera app. So, not that camera, there's dash cam. So there's dash cam. If you're driving and you hit the dash cam, so because I'm not driving now, it's opening the dash cam viewer. If you're driving and hit the dash cam icon, it does that 10 minutes of footage saving. If you have it in auto mode, it will do that if you hit the brakes really hard, or There's a lane depart. There's a couple of reasons, but it will do that a bit more occasionally automatically, save 10 minutes of footage. And also there's the on honk option, which means if you ever use the horn, it also saves the footage, which can be handy. Certainly a lot quicker to get to than trying to fish through a menu to find the option to to turn on the dash cam, particularly if you're in an emergency situation. And there's actually a new option here to delete dashcam clips. That's come along recently, and format the USB drive. If you get a warning about the USB drive being full and you just do not care to review the footage, you can just wipe it. Joe mode makes some of those chimes and carry on a bit quieter if you'd like them to be. Security alarm enables the security alarm. The security alarm went off in my car earlier this morning because for some reason, because the boot was open, I think. It turns on the stereo really loud and is really annoying. I'll talk about camp mode when I get to the air conditioning bit in a little while, but the reason that most people have the alarm go off is because they left kids in the car and walked away from the car to go to the shops or something, and just the movement of the kids in the car or the kids opening a door set off the alarm. The alarm beeps the horn repetitively and plays music, like hardcore metal music, in the car really, really loud. So it's quite uncomfortable if you left your gran in the car and go into the shops. She opens the door and gets screamed at for her trouble. Just ask me how I know. Pin to drive, so adds a pin number, like another layer of security, so that you can't drive the car without putting a pin in. Can be handy, if you're worried about relay attacks and things on the key. Generally not necessary, but depends on your level of paranoia. It means that you need to know the pin number as well as having the key to drive the car. And you can put a pin in the glove box as well, so that if you valet the car or loan the car to people, they can't get into the glove box. Cabin overheat protection runs the air conditioner to keep the interior of the car below 50 degrees. So only just runs the air conditioner, either by just running the fans or by actually using the air conditioner. It only does it for 12 hours after you leave the car. One thing to note is there's these little information bubbles on a bunch of settings that have got more detail. Click on those and read about it. Some key points that basically mean that there's no reason not to just leave it on all the time, for my mind. It'll only come on and try and keep the car under 40 degrees. It'll only do it for about 12 hours. So even in the beaming sun, it will only use a couple of percent of your battery. The no AC mode only uses a fan, so we'll use less battery, but the temperatures, I've seen them go up to about 50 or so in the blazing sort of summer sun. And the whole feature turns off when it hits 20% or less. So does Sentry. So people get worried about leaving their EV at a carport, at a garage at the airport and things like that. Realistically, if you left the car there and even forgot to turn off all the features or whatever, you'll come back to it on 18% because it would have gone down to 20% and then basically hibernated waiting for your return. So you should be fine. That'll still have 100 k's of range to get you to a supercharger or something like that to get you home. Service, and this is where you will find that 1-800 number. So if you have an accident, you need towing, you've got a flat battery, you've got some real clear and present issue with the car not moving, the car doesn't work, it's not how does this work, or I have a warning light or something like that. They're the sort of things you would log a service ticket about in the app. But if the car's stuck somewhere, ring the 1-800 number. It is a shortcut. You can even just press it and it will start ringing it straight away from your phone if you've got a phone connected. Quickly skim through this. Owner's manual is available to read on screen. You can put it in car wash mode, which for conveyor belt car washes, which are pretty rare, there's one in Maruka that I'm aware of. I don't think and those Hoppies car wash kind of things where there's a conveyor belt that grabs the car and drags it through the car wash. There's car wash mode for that. turns off the automatic wipers and a couple of other things. And if you click on it, it tells you what it'll do. Close all the windows, locks all the charge port, and all that sort of thing. Adjusting headlights. This will level the lights without actually doing anything, and it can be handy on occasion. I've found often when my car gets a software update, I'll go to drive the car and the headlights are obviously just not right. They're a bit too low or a bit too high or something. Just going into the screen and leaving it again, readjust them back to the factory default sort of level. Something I'm not terribly thrilled about, but I've regularly found that. Admittedly, it might have been 6 months since I've had that problem, so it's possible I've just fixed it in software. But you can calibrate the headlights. Do not do this ever. If you have problems with the way your headlights are adjusted, do not actually click these buttons and start fiddling with the dials. Talk to Tesla, get them to do it. There's a whole science around getting the car on level ground. Exactly what angle the headlight beam should be at is very specific, and just being a couple of degrees off can cause you to be shining blinding light into other people's eyes and stuff. Don't mess with it. Get Tesla to do it. Take it to service if you've got any trouble. Resetting tyre pressure sensors. There are two options here. Factory resetting will relearn them. If you've swapped out wheels and tyres and things like that, it will relearn which wheels are attached to which corner of the car and all that sort of stuff. Learning new pressures is good if you, and as Elon has tweeted previously and broadly recommended, if you don't particularly care about the efficiency of the car and prefer your car to be a bit comfortable, it's quite okay to run those pressures down to about 38 PSI, but you'll get warnings. Doing learn new pressures will learn 38 as your car's new baseline for the tyre pressure sensors. So they'll be green at 38 and will go red at 35 instead, rather than being green at 42 and going orange at 38 and red at 37 or something. It's a percentage. On this screen, and now you won't see it now because I'm not driving, but if you go into this service screen while the car's driving or soon after driving, the tyre pressure sensors are movement sensitive. They go to sleep when the car's parked, so you don't see the numbers here, but normally you'll see next to each of the tyres, you'll see a number on screen with the pressure. And it usually takes a couple of blocks of driving before those numbers will come up to see what the pressures are. Notifications, you can go back through this. So I actually had a tyre pressure warning this morning. I need to check one of them. I don't know whether it's going low or not, but you can go through this history. This history is also available in the app. If you click on it, it'll go to the page of the manual about that error message and give you more of an explanation. But in the app, if you log a service, go into service in the app, it will give you an option of logging a ticket specifically against that error message. So if something has come up about a drive unit fault or anything sort of significant, you can log a ticket specifically about that error. Seat and steering calibration. It's not a feature yet, but they've said it's coming, is that if you own multiple Teslas, if you make a change to the profile in one Tesla, it will synchronize across all of them. And this calibrates the seats so that the seat adjustment's accurately known by the car, and when you move from one car to the other, the seat adjustment will be exactly the same. You can do a factory reset, wipes all of the settings out of the car, basically everything except the odometer gets set back to 0. You get logged out of all the apps and lose all your high scores and all your games and all that sort of stuff. Towing isn't about towing a trailer, it's about towing the car, and gives you some instructions on how to do that, and makes it so that the park brake doesn't come on, so that the car can be towed onto a flatbed or towed up hauled up a driveway and stuff like that with the park brake off. Wheel configuration lets you change the size of the wheels. We'll change the picture on the screen in the car and also in the app, and we'll adjust that kilometer mass to better match the wheels. It's still not great, but cosmetically it makes the picture of the car look more sensible than whatever wheels the car came with. And a similar thing, and I'll just sort of skip to a different section for a second. Similarly, under software, there's this little red square that lets you change the color of the car. And you'll see that actually changes it live on the screen of the car. You can click that one in the corner to set it back to the actual color of your car. So if you get the car wrapped or whatever, you can change it, and that changes in the app as well. Camera calibration will recalibrate all the autopilot sensors. If you do that, you will need to drive for up to 160 kilometers along roads. And really, if you drive on some roads with some lines, you might be able to do it in 30 k's or so. It's recalibrating the 7-ish or 9-ish cameras around the car to understand the physics of where a painted line as it comes past the car, where it is on the ground relative to every one of those cameras, and getting them all realigned again. There's a bunch of math it's got to do to figure all that out to make the autopilot and lane keeping stuff work accurately. So it takes a while after that. So that will be up to 160 kilometers where you'll be driving around without being able to use auto steer. Clear browser data is just clearing your cookies in your web browser. And wiper service mode, which pops the wipers up so that they're easier to get to. If I close the bonnet. And hit wiper service mode, they just pop up a little bit, which is if you want to change the wipers, or if they've got a bit of gunk stuck under them or something like that and you want to clean it off, that just lets you get to that. Software updates. So this screen's more than just software updates. If you go to this screen, it will connect to the internet and do a little bit of churning and then tell you that you haven't got any updates available. But also just tells you the specs of your car, what features you've bought, premium connectivity, all that sort of stuff, and additional information about what type of computer the car's got. My car's got HomeLink installed, which is an automated garage door opener. You can buy that from Tesla as an option for $450. Back when I bought this car, it was a included feature. You see the release notes. Release notes are handy if you want to go back and you've seen new features that have been added to all the software versions your car's ever received. The sort of changes and what's changed with the last couple of feature versions are listed there for your viewing pleasure about the things that have changed. And upgrades, which is a work in progress. This has only just recently popped up and hasn't said anything useful yet. And this car's got all the options that would be available for it anyway. But if you've got an all-wheel drive car and you don't have the speed performance update, you can buy that on screen in the car if you so desire. A couple of other things around the sort of fringes of the screen beyond settings. We're almost done, home stretch. Is that you've got the Wi-Fi icon there, and that's where you can connect it to Wi-Fi networks if you so desire. There's a Bluetooth there, which lets you pair new Bluetooth phones. The Bluetooth key that the app uses to unlock the car and the Bluetooth audio device are totally separate things. One works separately without the other. At the moment, Model 3 can only connect to one phone at a time, so you select which phone you want to connect to. You can make one of your devices a priority device, so if two phones approach the car at the same time, it will go to your priority device. And this is also the device that it's... no, it's not. It's separate from the lock, so it's not the same as locking linking keys to profiles. You can do a bit, so synchronizing messages, syncing contacts, recent calls, and chiming on new messages, just a few sort of things, privacy things you can pick and change. Again, there's another little information thing there. Bit of a blurb about if you're having any trouble with your Bluetooth, about disconnecting it, reconnecting it, all that kind of thing. I just bumped the wiper stalk then, and the wipers come up if you do that. If you just tap it. The wiper stalk, if you tap it lightly, you just get a squirt. If you hold it in, you get a longer wash and some wiping. But at the same time, it pops up. If you're not happy with how the auto wipers are running, I normally have it on auto, but sometimes it's a bit too fast or a bit too slow, and if you don't want to manually set it, you can just tap the button at the end. That pops up on screen, and you can manually change it to what you want it to be. That's that chime thing there. Just continuing along the top here. That chime thing is those notifications, same as we saw in the service screen. And that little garage one is HomeLink, which most people wouldn't have. Most new cars don't have a HomeLink module. Most people don't chip out $450 to have it installed, but that does let you do some pretty cool stuff. I've got separate buttons set up to arm, disarm, and open the garage door in my house. You can set it up so that for disarm, it will. So when I drive up to my house and I'm within 21 meters of my house, it will disarm the alarm and open the garage automatically with some automation stuff that I've done in my house. Pretty neat, works really well. You can do that, auto fold the mirrors as it approaches, and also auto close the door when you leave, which I'm less keen on because I don't necessarily want to close the door every time I back out of the driveway. Sometimes I just want to back the car out and leave the door open. Along the top of the screen, there's that lock, which you talked about before. Sometimes you'll notice if you go into a different time zone, the time won't synchronize. If you tap the time, it will actually update it. Temperature, that's Sentry, and whether it's on or off, it'll have a little red dot in it if Sentry is running at the moment. And the profiles is just a quick selector for the profiles. On the nav screen, a little bit more stuff to cover here. I just to point out, if you tap this button here, it changes what your current view is, whether you're doing, and it'll toggle between route overview, the squiggly line, tell you just the whole route that you're currently navigating. North up will keep the map with the north up, which some people really like, and more common option is direction of travel. So the whole map, will, as you drive along, rotates to changes view and sort of zooms in and out of roundabouts as you approach them and things like that. You can also, if you just tap the screen, get a few bonus options that pop up. You get the option to type in a new address, but you get these down the side. If you've got premium connectivity, you'll be able to get a satellite view on that map, and you'll be able to turn on and off that traffic overlay, the orange and red lines on the map for traffic. I find the sat view a bit overwhelming and noisy, but you can also turn on charging, and I'll show you all your charging options around and take you back to that charger option screen there. I think I've pretty much covered navigating. And yeah, so just along the bottom bar here, you have volume controls and touch controls. You've got volume controls for the passenger here, whereas a driver would normally use the wheels on the steering. You have dual climate controls. If you tap the number, they pop up. If you change the temperature, one thing to note here is that split button will let you set a separate temperature reading for each side of the, or temperature setting for both sides of the car. There are little tiny indicators down the bottom here to tell you that the demisters are on or off. You can toggle between the front and the back view of the car. This is mostly to get to the rear seat heaters. There's an all-off button there, and you can turn the rear fan on or off. These are generally automatic. It knows whether there's a human being in the back of the car and in individual seats. So we'll generally, if there's no one in the back of the car, have the rear fan turn off in auto mode. If you have this on auto here, all these things just sort of look after themselves. And will just basically be based on temperature. If it's hot and you set the temperature to a cold number, it will ramp up the fan to get that temperature fixed as soon as possible. That scheduling options on that screen as well for a bonus. So because scheduling also scheduling changes the air conditioner, so there's a button to get to that schedule setting from the air conditioner as well. Seat heaters are in auto, so if it's Alright. Okay. Is that going? Right, so this stuff's all fairly self-explanatory. The one that's interesting here is camp mode, dog mode, and keep mode. They're degrees of security along with your air conditioning. So keep mode is the car will lock and everything as it normally would, but it will keep the air conditioner on the whole time that you're away from the car, at least until the battery goes down to 20%. Dog mode will turn off the interior security system of the car, so that if you leave a dog in the car, they're running around inside the car, won't set off Sentry. The movement sensor of the alarm is all turned off. Camp mode, and it will say, it says a little instruction on the center of the screen here, will keep the Sentry mode turned off, the security alarm turned off, and walk away door lock. So as you walk away from the car won't lock, and it's really good. It's called camp mode because theoretically it's the mode you'd use for camping in the car. If you're sleeping in the car, you'd want to be able to get out in the middle of the night and come back to the car without your key and without the car locking and all that sort of stuff. The really regular use for it is leaving kids in the car when I run into the shops. They can stay in the car with the air conditioning on. If they get out of the car, they can open the door, shut the door without the alarm going off. And they stay cool, comfortable, quiet. The radio keeps playing, all that sort of stuff. Excellent. If ever there was one reason to buy an EV, that's it for me. Probably enough of that. There's a bunch of apps and stuff in here. Not going to delve too much into that. It's sort of basically up to your interest whether or not you want to use them. You can edit which ones are locked in the bar down here. You can. The ones to the right of the X will always be available, and the two to the left vary depending on whatever you've used last. Most of them, not things that you use too regularly. This energy, though, is what Nathan was talking about earlier, is this graph to where you're going. So it says that I'm starting this trip at 23% and I'll finish at 2%. This is navigating to the Gold Coast. And the colour of the line changes basically with the level of the battery. It goes orange at 15% and goes red at 5%, sorry. Yeah, 5%. And as you vary and actually complete this trip, that graph will vary away from the prediction. The prediction is based on the last 50 kilometres of travel that the car's done, so the consumption it's doing, it's the consumption figure it's using for all this math, which does mean on a trip that's longer than 50 kilometres, you can get that graph as you go up the range. Like if you drive from Warwick to here, you'll see it as you go up the range. You'll say you won't make it, you won't make it, you won't make it, and then as you come over the range, you'll go you're good, you can, we're fine. So it still is a best effort on the data it has available to you. This math is often a little bit wonkier on my car because I've got these aftermarket wheels on it. Some of the sort of assumptions it makes about how the car will perform at different speeds is different to what it will actually. So energy graph's quite handy on a trip, and always be navigating. It will also tell you the consumption over the last X amount of distance, just a FYI kind of thing. Spotify is the apps I use mostly is Spotify. If you want to sign into your account, the car, if you've got premium connectivity, the car has its own Spotify account. But that means that if you save playlists in the car or save playlists on your phone, they're not synchronized between the two. If you sign into your Spotify account, which I think is right down the bottom, you have to keep scrolling all the way down to the bottom, you'll be able to sign in with your personal Spotify account, and that means that the playlists and even what you're currently playing is synchronized between the phone and the car. Tune-ins, digital radio stations, they'll only work if you're in range, or the FM radio, and as much as it says FM on the logo, it is digital and FM radio. You can see favorites are the ones that you've saved. Stations are what it can actually hear on the air at the moment. So if I put it on ABC Brisbane, if I star that and light up that star, that will actually get removed from the list here. So I already had it there. Or you can type in a specific frequency. Realistically, this station's list, unlike an old school radio where you had to go scanning and figuring out what they are, this is live update as you drive along. Whatever on earth TikTok trending is. Okay. Kids today. And that's probably about it. I've been talking for a very long time. I kind of knew that this would be the biggest section of the day and possibly the most boring. But sorry. When you install the app will ask you for permissions to your calendar, and you need to grant it permissions to the calendar, and that will work. But yeah, you need to do it. And you should be able to. I've got an Android phone, so it might be a bit different to someone who's got my phone. But very good question. Actually, sorry, no. It is. If you go to on the top right hand corner of the app is your profile, and go to settings. There is calendar sync in there. And if you've got it turned off, turn it on. It will pop up saying I need permissions to your calendar on your phone, and it will take the calendar data from your phone and put it in the car. And there's an app in there, so in that app tray there's a calendar app in there.
With the home link as well, because I'm pretty sure I've got home link in there. Do I need to buy something to talk to the?
Yeah, it's not compatible with all garage door openers. It's compatible with most, so just try and pair it. And go into it and say add a new location. It'll go through a wizard on screen, figuring some things out and doing some different tests. It'll tell you to get out of the car and hold your garage door opener near the front number plate. And hold down button 1 until the lights flash, and the lights will flash and you go back inside and it'll say, okay, now press the pairing button on your garage door. And, yeah.
You can buy it.
Yeah, I've got a. Yeah, my original one didn't. I bought an external receiver, a Merlin M2.03 or something receiver, and it just wires into. There's terminals inside the garage door that you connect that external module to, and then pair that with the car. That's fine.
Is there a 12-volt system available, like when you go camping?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Seriously?
does anyone want to sit down for a while? Do you want to come stand up and I'll show you some physical things on the inside of the car? Yeah, stretch it.